Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the relationship with China could be productive even as the two countries remain rivals. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told the BTG Pactual CEO conference in Sao Paulo Tuesday, "We are going to be rivals," referring to China. At the same time, he said U.S.-China relations are, quote, in a very comfortable place. Bessent added that the U.S. doesn't want to decouple from China, but it needs to de-risk. He says Washington is working to retake sovereignty in key industries like critical minerals, medicine, and semiconductors. China currently dominates the supply chains for critical minerals and medicine. Meanwhile, Taiwan produces nearly all of the world's most advanced chips. The island lies just 80 miles off China's coast and faces ongoing threats of invasion from Beijing. Bessent added that over the long term, China will need to rebalance its economy, pointing to its $1 trillion trade surplus with the world. He's set to meet with Vice Premier He Lifeng in the coming weeks to prepare for President Trump's China visit in April. Nvidia is being told follow strict U.S. licensing rules or risk losing access to China's AI chip market. At a congressional hearing Tuesday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnik said the terms were negotiated with the State Department and that Nvidia must live with them. One major sticking point is a proposed Know Your Customer requirement aimed at preventing China's military from accessing Nvidia's H200 chips. Last week, Reuters reported that the company hasn't agreed to these terms, raising national security concerns. China had agreed on H200 chip imports for its tech giants Alibaba and Tencent, as well as AI startup DeepSeek. All three firms reportedly have close ties to the Chinese military. The sale of these chips were allowed after President Trump and China's Xi reached a trade truce in South Korea last October. The agreement also gave a one-year delay to a rule blocking U.S. tech exports to thousands of Chinese firms, as long as they aren't tied to the military. Coming up, Congress sends a message to China. Any invasion of Taiwan will have consequences. The House passed the Protect Taiwan Act, outlining how the U.S. would respond to threats.
Exclusion from international bodies must be a part of that response.
And Taiwan's president is pressing lawmakers to pass a stalled $40 billion defense budget. Part of the funding would go toward purchasing American weapons. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A warning from Congress to China. Invading Taiwan would come with consequences. The House passed the Protect Taiwan Act on Monday. It aims to remove China from 6 international financial organizations, including the G20, if Beijing threatens Taiwan's security. Here's Representative Frank Lucas, the bill's sponsor, speaking on the House floor.
The United States' response to an invasion of Taiwan should be robust and include numerous sanctions and economic penalties. Exclusion from international bodies must be a part of that response.
Taiwan's foreign minister posted a statement thanking lawmakers who supported the bill. He wrote, "This achievement once again highlights the cross-party support of the U.S. Congress for Taiwan's security and democratic resilience." Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te is pressing lawmakers to pass a stalled $40 billion defense budget. Opposition party lawmakers have blocked it and proposed a significantly smaller package instead. Lai warns that delays of the budget approval could raise questions in the international community about Taiwan's resolve to defend itself.
I believe that Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi won the support of the Japanese people because, in addition to strengthening Japan's defense capabilities and making Japan strong and prosperous, she also demonstrated Japan's determination to work with allied countries to maintain regional peace and stability.
And over in Hong Kong, a father has been Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A major power shift in Japan following Sanae Takaichi's landslide snap election win. And here at home, a new U.S. foreign policy idea is drawing attention as President Trump's Board of Peace and China's response sparked global debate. We spoke with retired Marine Colonel Grant Newsham, a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy and author of When China Attacks, for more. Grant Newsham, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Fred, always glad to be here.
Now that Takaichi's coalition has swept the snap elections, winning a supermajority, you've actually seen 19 different prime ministers in Japan. What can we expect in Japan under Takaichi now that she has that supermajority?
You heard immensely popular. She got a huge amount of the vote, and conservative candidates got, like 85% of the votes, or the seats, but the actual votes, it was a huge majority compared to what you usually get. And she is somebody who comes in with an actual platform. She has ideas of what she intends to do. She's actually started doing it, the short time she's been in office. And usually when you have Japanese prime ministers, they come in with a slogan. And if you ask them, well, what are you going to do? They would really generally be at a loss. They would say, well, I'll ask my chief of staff, or I'll ask the government what I'm supposed to do. And with her, I saw this quote in an article about the election, and it was a young Japanese lady who was interviewed, and she says, well, Takaichi says things clearly. And it's about that simple. So she's got a plan. She's going to try and implement it. And this is something that the Japanese people often respond to very well when they see leadership.
We've seen China responding rather negatively to the election, trying to make sure the status quo and peace remains. Speaking of peace, though, there's a lot of focus on President Trump's new Board of Peace. China was invited but has rejected to join, saying, it wants to stay and it remains fully committed to the United Nations. What do you make of the Board of Peace and what message that is sending to China?
Well, at some point, one has to actually respond to things President Trump suggests or starts doing and say, well, it's never been tried before. Let's see how it works. I think it is a reaction to sort of the inability of the United Nations to really accomplish much. The United Nations has been working on Gaza for decades, and how well has it done? And that, I think, was the original purpose of the Board of Peace, was to come up with a way to really develop Gaza and deal with this problem that has only gotten worse over the years, hasn't gotten better. And you bring in people with money, people with some ideas, business people, and see if you can actually create some economic prosperity as a way to defuse these rather deep-seated animosities. Now, how it's actually going to work in practice, hard to say, but since Marco Rubio's involved, I suspect it has a fighting chance. But it is something that has just gotten, let's say, people who are used to everything that's been done for the last 70, 80 years as the only way to do it has really got their hair on fire. So President Trump has come up with something different, and we'll see what he can do.
Speaking of the UN, there's been a lot of reporting over the years, especially with the countries where China has a big presence, whether that's Belt and Road or other initiatives and influence campaigns, that a lot of those countries, a lot in Africa, vote along with China, especially when it comes to human rights issues where they don't expose it. Could the Board of Peace be something that actually creates change, unlike what we've seen with the UN?
Well, you never know. The UN has simply gotten so ridiculous. When you have, countries like Iran, for example, China on the Human Rights Commission, and you do have to ask yourself, well, what has it produced? What is this class of people? What have these organizations produced? And it's not a very good scorecard. And you never know. Board of Peace, it's got its work cut out for it to try and displace something that is so established as the United Nations and other international organizations. And if it has some immediate success, well, maybe it just might, over time, become a replacement, an alternative to the really one. I used to collect for UNICEF as a child on Halloween. At some point, you have to say, well, these organizations don't really do what they're supposed to do. So it's a long shot, and it's one of many things, many initiatives that the Trump administration has going. But one never knows. But as I said, you've seen so many things come out of this White House, that everyone thinks are impossible, and then something happens. So I'm in the wait-and-see mode, but not willing to dismiss it.
Well, Grant Newsham, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I always enjoy the opportunity.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
日本首相高市早苗在众议院的大选当中取得历史性的胜利啊，那美国总统川普也第一时间祝贺。那我们要请教印太战略智库的执行长石柏如先生啊，想要请教您啊，您形容说接下来亚洲可能会进入一个高市时代啊，那你觉得高市呢在美国信赖盟友的角色上面，或在亚洲的角色呢，可能会有哪一些行动，或者说这样的时代可能会有哪些变化？
首先呢，我觉得就是说高市的外交政策，那么如果用6个字概括，就是说亲美、抗中、挺台，这点是非常明显的。那么日本跟美国的关系，首先呢，就是高市早苗、安倍晋三，这都是非常亲美派，或者可以说亲川普派。那么就是说日本国内其实跟台湾一样，也有一些以美论，就认为这个美国关键的时刻就是可能不帮日本等等，但高市早苗的想法是和美国建立信任关系之后呢，日本能做的事情自己做，要加强自己的这个军备，让日本早日形成变成一个正常的国家。这一点呢，其实和川普的利益是相当一致的，所以在这方面他们并没有矛盾。所以说我想今后呢，在这方面日本的增强国防方面和这个加深和美国的关系的方向，我想高市呢会更积极的。那么现在知道就是3月份高市要访问美国，那么川普呢在4月份要访问中国之前，也有可能再次来到日本。所以说日美之间的密切接触，包括这次高市早苗选举期间这个川普公开相挺，这种关系呢可能是一个代表着新的日美的时代的来临。那么对于抗中方面呢，我觉得就是说中国的对外扩张，这个呢会严重影响日本的国家安全。那么如果中国在这方面进行对外扩张的话呢，日本我想绝对会以强有力的回击的方式做比较这个中国难以接受的方式动作，所以这方面我觉得是很清楚的。关于台湾方面的话呢，我想是这个具体的怎么做，是应该有很多地方可以做，比如现在日台之间的政府间的对话，一些情报的共有，包括一些共同的海上训练等等，这些事情其实都是可以做的，但是我觉得没有必要做得太高调嘛。这高市早苗是个比较务实的领袖，所以说，怎么说这方面我觉得日台关系会有非常长足的进展，但是说也许表面上的一些事情应该可能是比较低调的，但是我觉得这个大概方向就是亲美这个抗中挺台是不会改变的。
这真的是缺牙救星。